Have you ever met someone just incredibly insightful, maybe even a bit mysterious, someone who seems to hold some profound secret about life, and you just desperately want to understand what it is?
Oh, absolutely. Or maybe you found yourself caught, between wanting to know something just out of pure curiosity and feeling the weight of maybe finding out a truth that's, well, hidden for a reason.
Exactly. It's a classic human dilemma, isn't it?
It really is that pull towards understanding, especially when you get into the messy parts of human nature, past experiences. It can be incredibly compelling.
And also unsettling sometimes.
Definitely unsettling.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into an extraordinary set of sources, excerpts from Natsume Soseki's powerful novel, Kokoro. It explores these exact themes.
Right. We'll be pulling out sort of the core nuggets of wisdom and insight from this really rich narrative.
And we're focusing specifically on that intricate dance, between the curious young student narrator and his enigmatic mentor, Sensei.
Yeah, our mission, like always, is to navigate this material. We're digging out the key details, the surprising facts that really shine a light on those deep connections between personal history, morality, and, well, the nature of happiness and suffering itself.
It's about seeing how one person's sort of hidden pain really shapes their whole view of the world.
Precisely.
So buckle up, because here's where it gets really interesting as we unpack this profound journey of understanding presented in these pages. Let's start right at the beginning of this relationship. It's summer vacation. They're in Kamakura. Our narrator, the student, he kind of stumbles upon this man he eventually calls Sensei. So what was it about Sensei, that first grabbed the narrator's attention, especially on a crowded beach?
Well, what's fascinating here is how accidental it seems, their first encounter. And it wasn't even Sensei himself, not initially.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was his companion, a Westerner, apparently with incredibly white skin, just wearing loincloths, which, was pretty unusual back then, even for foreigners.
Okay, wow. Quite a sight.
Definitely. And that striking contrast just made Sensei stand out, even with all the people around. It sort of set him apart right away.
So Sensei is introduced through this, unusual context, almost like a figure set apart. And he keeps up that detached feeling, right?
He does.
What does the text tell us about his initial attitude towards, interacting with people, and how does our narrator finally break through that?
Well, Sensei is described as distinctly non-social. He shows up at set times, leaves at set times, doesn't pay much attention to the crowds.
Right.
And he's often alone after that Western friend isn't around anymore. The icebreaker isn't some big effort. It's actually a small accident.
An accident.
Yeah, Sensei drops his glasses, the narrator helps him find them. And that leads to the first actual words exchanged, just thank you.
Huh. Such a small thing.
A tiny thing, but it's enough. It allows the narrator to then kind of join Sensei for swims, and that's the real start.
Okay, so after they start swimming together, the narrator gets to observe him more closely. And Sensei starts dropping these little hints, right? Glimpses of his inner world, but often quite cryptically.
Exactly. Cryptic is a good word for it.
What are some of those early kind of provocative things he says? Especially about love or his own, struggles.
Yeah, this really gets to the heart of Sensei's philosophy, or maybe the pain behind it. During a conversation about love, he just comes out and says, startlingly, love is a sin.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. And later, he tells the narrator their connection, their friendship, is like a staircase to love. But then he immediately warns him off again. He says, be careful, love is a sin. And asks this really haunting question. Do you know what it feels like to be bound by black, long hair?
Oof. That implies a lot.
It really does. Shows this deep internal conflict, He also mentions his ethical darkness. And he says he intends to reveal his past to the narrator like living lessons.
Living lessons.
Yeah. Even though he admits he was reluctant at first, he calls himself a poor philosopher. But he wants to pass on something real. He uses this incredibly intense image.
What's that?
Of breaking his own heart to metaphorically splash his blood on the narrator's face.
Good heavens, that's intense. Ultimate vulnerability, almost.
Extremely intense. It's a total painful disclosure.
Okay, so moving beyond just Sensei himself, the narrator gets to know his household a bit, especially his wife. What's the dynamic like there between Sensei and his wife? And how does she see his reclusiveness and maybe his misanthropy?
Well, on the surface, they look like a pretty harmonious couple that go out together, concerts, plays, they even travel. Sensei himself says they should be the happiest couple.
Should be. Key word there.
Exactly, because the narrator does see a rare argument, And he notices Sensei's lonely laughter sometimes, or moments of cloudiness on his face.
Hmm.
And his wife, she's actually quite perceptive. She doesn't think Sensei is just lazy. She believes he hates the world and people in general.
She says that. Hates the world.
Yeah. But she also senses he probably wants to do something, achieve something, but feels he cannot. And she feels deep sympathy for him. She even thinks she's the one person who brings him the most happiness.
Wow, that's a fascinating layer. It suggests his unhappiness isn't really about the marriage itself.
Right. It seems to come from something much deeper, something internal.
Does the wife give any hints about Sensei's past? Something she thinks caused this big change in him? And what's her biggest frustration in trying to understand him?
She does give a crucial clue. She says Sensei wasn't like this when he was young.
Oh, okay.
And she specifically points to his student days and mentions a very close friend who died suddenly, just before graduation.
Died suddenly.
And she uses the phrase unnatural death, which suggests something, suspicious, maybe violent, though she admits she doesn't know the whole story herself.
And that's her frustration, not knowing.
That's the core of it. Her biggest frustration is that Sensei absolutely refuses to tell her why he changed. He just insists he has no flaws, or rather, the flaws are entirely his own, nothing to do with her. She really struggles with the idea that maybe she is the reason.
Oh, that must be agonizing for her.
Yeah, she says the thought cuts her to the quick. Which really begs the question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Why hide this truth from his wife, the person he claims brings him happiness, even while he's planning to tell the narrator everything?
That disconnect is powerful. And the text even mentions she still doesn't know the full story, even after Sensei's death.
Right, which makes his eventual confession to the narrator even more significant.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly. While this is going on, our narrator's own father gets sick. And Sensei starts asking him these surprisingly practical questions about family money inheritance.
Yeah, it seems a bit out of the blue, doesn't it?
It does. Why does Sensei suddenly get so direct about money? And what's the stark warning he gives?
It is surprising. He directly asks about the narrator's family wealth, urges him to sort out his inheritance before his father passes away.
Why the urgency?
Well, Sensei's explanation is pretty chilling. He says, flat out, when it comes to money, any gentleman immediately becomes a scoundrel.
Any gentleman. Wow.
Yeah, he believes the most trouble arises from property matters after someone dies. And this isn't just, general cynicism. He reveals this deep bitterness.
From his own experience.
Exactly. He says people of his own blood deceived him, acted dishonorably after his own father died. It caused him humiliation and damage that he says he'll never forget.
Ah, okay. So this isn't just abstract philosophy. It's rooted in a really deep personal betrayal.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like that experience underpins his whole view of people, especially that profound misanthropy you mentioned. What did he mean when he said he learned to hate humanity in general?
He says it just like that. I have learned to hate humanity in general. And he clarifies, it's not just his relatives he hates. He sees them as like representatives of a basic human flaw.
Okay.
He says something like, ordinary people are all good, or at least ordinary. But when it comes to a crunch, they suddenly turn into villains, so it's terrifying.
That's a bleak outlook.
It is. And he makes another powerful statement about rejecting respect now to avoid being stepped on later. Something like, the memory of once kneeling before that person now tries to put one's foot on that person's head.
Goodness, that shows such a deep distrust, maybe even a kind of protective self-loathing born from that past hurt.
Yeah, it's tragic, really, how one betrayal can just poison everything.
It really is.
Yeah.
And while Sensei is wrestling with this internal ethical darkness, our narrator is dealing with something much more immediate mortality, right? His father's health is failing.
Exactly. A very different kind of confrontation with death.
How does the father's illness progress, and what's the contrast with Sensei's more philosophical struggle?
Well, the narrator's father has chronic kidney disease. He's pretty stoic at first, but then his condition gets much worse. There's mention of yellow vomit, increasing difficulty. It's a clear physical decline.
And his attitude towards death.
It's poignant. Despite some denial, he seems to accept it eventually. His main wish is just for his son, the narrator, to graduate before he passes. It's a simple, grounded acceptance of a natural end.
And Sensei?
Sensei, meanwhile, is physically healthy, but seems tormented by the idea of death, specifically unnatural violence.
Ah, connecting back to his friend's death.
Almost certainly. It's clear foreshadowing of his own end, too, and seems directly linked to that friend's unnatural death. So you have this stark contrast. The father's quiet acceptance of natural decline versus Sensei's obsession with violent, perhaps self-inflicted ends.
And the narrative ties the father's illness into bigger national events too, doesn't it? Giving it this historical weight.
It does brilliantly.
What events coincide with the father's last days, and how do they echo the themes of mortality in the past?
The serious illness and then the death of the Emperor Meiji loom large. And then right after the emperor dies, General Nogi Moreso commits ritual suicide seppuku.
Right, a very traditional dramatic act.
Hugely significant, and these events are felt deeply, even in the narrator's rural home. The father follows the news avidly, even drawing parallels between the emperor's illness and his own.
And Nogi's death.
Nogi's suicide, this dramatic act of self-sacrifice tied to an older code, serves as this powerful, almost unsettling backdrop. It contrasts sharply with the father's quiet, natural death, but it resonates chillingly with Sensei's own later suicide. It really underscores the weight of tradition, the past, and a certain kind of ethical code that Sensei himself seems tragically bound by in his final decision.
Okay, so the narrator is getting deeper and deeper into Sensei's world, his mystery. He starts really pushing Sensei to reveal his past, doesn't he?
He does, relentlessly. He becomes quite bold about it.
How does Sensei react to that persistence, and what's the significance of him finally promising to tell everything?
Sensei is initially quite hesitant, even startled by the narrator's directness. He comments on the narrator's boldness, but also his sincerity, especially when the narrator insists that understanding Sensei's past is the source of his philosophy.
He connects the dots.
Exactly. And Sensei, it seems like, in a moment of real vulnerability, finally agrees. He says he'll share everything, including that ethical darkness he mentioned.
Why the narrator, do you think?
Sensei recognizes something unique in the narrator's earnestness. He says he wants to trust someone completely before he dies, and he hopes the narrator can become that one person. It feels like a desperate need for confession, for understanding before the end.
So the tension just ramps up. The narrator goes back home, his father is fading, and he's just waiting for this huge revelation from Sensei.
Yeah, the waiting must have been intense.
What happens next? What leads to Sensei's final, shocking message?
Well, while the narrator is at home, dealing with his father's illness, Sensei sends a telegram. It just asks if the narrator can come to Tokyo. Simple as that.
But he can't leave his father.
Right. So the narrator sends a long letter back explaining why he can't come, and he also sort of implicitly asked about getting a job through Sensei. Then Sensei sends a second telegram, just saying no need to come, which must have been confusing, maybe even felt a bit cold at the time.
Yeah, seems dismissive.
But then the really pivotal thing arrives, a heavy, sealed manuscript. Not a job offer, not advice. It's Sensei's complete confession.
The whole story.
The whole story. It's this massive shift, from mentor to confessor. And it forces the narrator to face a truth he probably wasn't fully prepared for.
This is it, the moment of truth. What's the immediate, earth-shattering revelation right at the start of that letter? And why does Sensei say he chose to write it all down instead of waiting?
The very first page hits like a ton of bricks. Sensei writes basically, by the time this letter reaches you, I will no longer be in this world. I will surely be dead.
Oh my God, right at the start.
Right at the start. It's his suicide note and his final testament, all in one. He explains that by choosing death, he obtained the freedom to tell everything. But he knew that freedom, that worldly freedom, would be lost if he waited for the narrator to return. He felt this deep obligation to share his ethical darkness, his past, as those living lessons he talked about.
And why the narrator specifically?
He sees the narrator as the one person out of millions who is sincere enough to receive this terrible truth. He uses that image again, likening it to breaking open his own heart and splashing his blood, his deepest sorrows, onto the narrator's face.
It's like he wants his truth to live on even if he can't.
Exactly. He writes something like he wants his new life to begin when his own beats stop. It's this desperate hope for his story, his pain, his truth, to find meaning through someone else.
Wow. And the narrator's frantic reaction described in the book, rushing to the train station, it just tells you how incredibly powerful and devastating this confession is. So this whole journey, this deep dive into Kokoro, culminating in this final tragic letter, what does it ultimately teach us about the human experience as Soseki portrays it here?
Well, what we've really seen is this profound exploration of how past trauma, especially trauma involving trust, betrayal, family, money, how it can just completely warp a person's entire view of the world. It can lead to this deep, cynical misanthropy we saw in Sensei.
Yeah.
Sensei, through his own intense suffering, becomes this really tragic example of how knowledge, especially knowledge rooted in personal pain, can actually lead to isolation instead of connection.
Until the very end.
Until the very end, yeah.
Uh-huh.
His final act, that letter, is this incredibly desperate attempt to finally bridge that gap, but only with the one person he feels might possibly understand.
So what does this mean for us reading this today? What's the takeaway?
I think this deep dive into Kokoro really reminds us about the hidden burdens people carry. How sometimes seemingly simple, cynical statements like love is a sin or money makes good people evil can actually stem from these incredibly deep personal tragedies.
Yeah, things we might never guess are behind it.
Exactly. And it also highlights the responsibility, that comes with seeking that deeper understanding from someone and the sheer courage it takes to confront uncomfortable truths, whether they're our own truths or the truths of someone we look up to, like the narrator looked up to Sensei.
That's a really important point. It makes you think.
It absolutely does. It
Yeah.
really prompts us to consider, how much of our own philosophy on life, our own outlook, is truly just reasoned out, and how much is maybe implicitly shaped by our own past incidents, our own unspoken sorrows, like Sensei's. Kokoro leaves us with that powerful image of Sensei in his final moment, trying to pass on his painful truth, his living lesson. And it makes you wonder, if you were to open your own heart like that, metaphorically splash your blood for someone else, what profound, maybe unsettling truth would you reveal? About yourself or about the world as you've experienced it?
That is a powerful question to ponder, a really profound thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of human nature and the timeless, tragic lessons of Kokoro.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep digging beneath the surface.